Hello everyone. It's the year of the snake, so I'm gonna make Nuregami from okami. Now I know I did a poll a little while ago about which brush god to make next, and everybody wanted the rat first, but I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to make a snek, so we're gonna go with her first. I will definitely be making the rat though later on, so don't you worry. Now this was an interesting creature to tackle, cause on one hand her design is super simple, but little did I know there would be a wild journey ahead of me. So without further ado, let's get started. This time we start out with the wire, which I am definitely not excited for at all because felting around wire sucks a lot. But it's necessary because I don't think it would actually be possible to stuff wire this long into it like I usually do. Now I wrap a thin piece of core wool around the wire as evenly as possible. I wrap that up with yarn to keep it all together. I do this because it skips a whole lot of tedious felting early on to get it compact enough to work with. So to get this to work, I need to be able to fit this incredibly long noodle inside this plastic ball. It might not look like it when it's coiled up, but at this stage the body is almost 4 feet long. And later on I decided that I wasn't miserable enough, so I added on another 2 feet to it, making it by far the longest thing that I've made to date, and hopefully will ever have to make in the future. Now that I know it fits, I begin the absolutely grueling task of felting the body and covering up that core wool. It might seem easy since it's just a noodle with not much going on, but this took hours to do. The recording says I spent 8 hours on this, and yeah, that feels about right. It was a full day's work just covering the body with white wool, and then I had to go back and refine it even more because it ended up all lumpy and bumpy. And with it being so ridiculously long, I had a hard time working with it at all because 90% of it would be hanging off my desk and knocking all the things over around me, or sticking itself in the potted plant next to me, and all this while felting around wire, my most hated thing in needle felting. I broke 3 needles doing this. Sorry, I just had to rant about this because oh my lord, I lost my mind making this. Finally, we're done with the base body. I coiled her up into a pose that will let her fit inside the ball, and then felted up certain parts to a thickness that made sense to me. I'm not going for complete anatomical accuracy here, so I'm just going on vibes alone here. Now we move on to something that isn't just a plain long tube. I start with a little cylinder for the head and build up the snout and cheeks. I don't know exactly what kind of snake Nuregami is based on, but I wanted to model her after my own little noodle. He's a ball python, so she will be getting that little puppy mouth those snakes are known for. Of course, I needed to give her a little blep. With the head attached to the body, it's time for the little curly fluffs that go behind it. For those, I rolled up a piece of wool roving and gently felted the swirl to make it more pronounced. To keep it shaped without getting messed up, I spray the pieces with glue as I go. To keep her consistent with amaterasu, I use chalk pastels for the markings on her body too. Once those are done, it's time to seal this snake away in her prison. I try to position her in a way that the seal isn't visible in the front, so I have to awkwardly shove her in at an angle since it's hard to adjust her position once she's inside. Of course, I couldn't find a perfect round bottle with a little cork on the top like in her artwork, so I have to mutilate this smaller plastic bottle and graft it to the top. So here I struggle to cut the top off because the bottle was a lot sturdier than I thought it would be, but once it's off and trimmed down a bit, I hot glue it to the big bottle. For those little decorations on the bottle, I whipped out my epoxy sculpt to get the job done. I went with this because it cures overnight and I don't have to bake it in the oven. I don't exactly know what baking would do to this, but I didn't really want to take that chance. So something that air cures is good for me. This stuff is so sticky, which is good because it attaches to the bottle very easily, but my hands got covered in this like residue, which also transferred to the plastic on the bottle. And you'll see over time how the bottle will get cloudier and cloudier until the end. Now, I'm not the best with clay sculpting, so this wasn't the smoothest finish I would have liked it to be, but also this clay wasn't the easiest to work with either. It was very hard to smooth it as I went. I did try sanding afterwards, but my arthritic hands couldn't handle it very well, so I had to settle for good enough here. These decorations were also far from being consistent in size, but let's just say that was a stylistic choice. To reduce the cloudiness, I wiped off the residue before the whole thing cured with rubbing alcohol, which worked decently enough, but I don't think the bottle will be as pristine and clear as it was out of the box, unfortunately. After curing overnight and giving it a light sanding, I paint the decorations with gold paint, giving it a good few coats. And once that was done, I finished it with a matte varnish to protect the paint from chipping. The final touch is tying this cotton rope around the bottle opening. Now, I ordered gold rope, but I was sent this mac and cheese color instead, even though it was labeled as gold. So we're just gonna have to go with that because I didn't want to have to order more. And with that, she's all done.